YouTube.com/AllNBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares, hosting my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler, here from Studio B at DNVR. Legs?
Every time I come out here, man, I think to myself, maybe I should have moved to Denver.
Hey, man.
Should I? What do you think?
I try to tell you this.
I should just move to Denver because it's awesome being in here with you, man.
You're not built for the winters out here, though, man. Florida guy.
What's that supposed to mean?
You're just not
calling me
built for
soft?
it.
I'm not a Florida guy, man. I spent most of my life in the Philly area. Come on, man.
I'm just saying, man, it's tough out here.
Man, wow. 30 seconds in, he's coming at me.
You got to be on guard when we're in studio. We got a great show, though, because last night's games were fantastic. The Celtics get the Knicks 127-102 in the Cornet game. I'm not going to tell you. Actually, I will tell you what Legs texted me. I'm sure we'll get to it as that game was unfolding. We're also going to talk about the Wolves beating the Warriors. Where do the Warriors go from here? And are the Wolves playing their best basketball of the year? I want to talk about that later on in the show. Nuggets Thunder tonight. Legs is on the call. And we have to talk about Cooper Flagg. We've pushed it back too far. We haven't had time, but we got to get to it. Because I know I've been talking to Legs about Cooper Flagg all year. I know he has some takes on it. And now the Mavs win the #1 pick, so that'll be interesting. But let's start with the Celtics game. Tie game at the half. It's pretty close. But then Luke Cornet happens.
Adam Mares clone?
This is what he texted me. Hey, his words, not mine.
Listen, I've heard so much about Adam's shot blocking prowess when he was playing. And not just from Adam, by the way, which I've heard a lot of it from Adam.
Yeah.
Okay. I've also heard it from some people that have actually been on the court with Adam playing pickup basketball about this guy's shot blocking ability. So I'm watching Luke Cornet last night. Of course, I'm going to have Adam Mares in my head, imagining you back in the day, just punching everything into the crowd.
It wasn't Jaren Jackson Jr., Wemby. It wasn't those guys. It was Luke Cornet, because you were surprised to hear I block shots, and you were surprised to see Cornet actually block shots.
Well, listen, I know the guy's capable of doing that. I've actually become a big Luke Cornet fan, not just
good.
last night. He's always, I don't know, he just always seems to have an impact when he gets extended minutes. I mean, there's no question that he had a huge impact on that turnaround. Because that game, they basically took control of that game in the middle of the third quarter on, and then they turned it into a boat race, and the Knicks never really able to make a run. Foul trouble played a little bit into that, but this was more about the Celtics. And they needed to get that life from somewhere, because if that game stays one possession game going into the fourth quarter, the anxiety that the Celtics would have started to feel, I think, could have affected their shooting because they know that they're basically about to get closed out. And Cornet was the guy, I thought, that turned it around, man. He brought the crowd to their feet, and it led directly to not only protecting the rim and you're preventing points, but they had some opportunities in the open floor because of his shot blocking. So it's rare you're going to see a backup center, right, that's not really a scorer, have the kind of impact that Luke Cornet had in this game. 10 points, 9 boards, and 7 blocks in 26 minutes.
And I think 5 of those in the third quarter, 5 or 6 of them in the third quarter. So what happened in that third quarter? I mean, you mentioned the foul trouble. Jalen Brunson picked up 5 fouls in one quarter.
Which I've never even heard of. Is that some sort of an NBA record?
It's got to be an NBA record. It is pretty crazy, especially for a starter. And it's not like he's a guy that's in foul trouble very often. So extra weird. But outside of that, what else happened in that third quarter that Boston figured out?
I thought, well, a couple things. I did think that New York's offense really stalled. They weren't doing anything to force Boston to have to play multiple passes. I thought it became sort of Brunson heavy, over dribbling a little bit. The few looks they got that were clean from the three, they didn't really make. And then Boston they found the rhythm. They got great contributions from not just Cornet during that stretch, but Sam Hauser hit a big shot. Pritchard hit a big shot. A couple of those were late clock plays. And those are the plays that are just backbreakers. You play great defense for 20 seconds, and then somebody hits a 3 at the end of that. And it was taking the lead from like 8 to 11 or 12 to 15. And it just felt like huge body blows to the Knicks. And then at some point, it just was like a flood. And now, I don't know if the Knicks ever got to the point where they're thinking like, okay, we got game 6 back in the Garden. Let's start focusing on that. But at one point, obviously, the lead became insurmountable, and you take your foot off the gas a little bit. I think the Celtics demoralized them in that quarter. Basically, the second half of the third quarter into the first half of the fourth, like that 12 minutes was so dominant by the Celtics. It sets up a really dynamic game 6 Friday night.
To me, it looks like you can't fake desperation. And one team is obviously desperate. And the Knicks, I mean, look, they built up their lead in this series 3-1 prior to that game. So credit to them for it. But they just looked like a team that was a little on their heels, didn't have the fire. But here's the thing I want to ask you. Sometimes, you're going to think this is pillow talk. I can already see it coming. Sometimes a guy goes down. In this case, Tatum and Porzingis, who couldn't start the second half because of respiratory issues. And sometimes it's almost tougher for the other team because it's a completely different look. You think about one way, you're this deep into a series, we know what we have to do, and the assignment changes. And this isn't an excuse. You can overcome it because they're less talented. But I do wonder if that was part of it. Like Cornette comes out, he started in the second half, and it's like, oh, okay, this is what we thought.
No, truthfully, no. I'm just going to be blunt about it. Look, you're always better off if a team has less talent. You're playing, especially in a playoff series. Like you take a guy like Tatum off the floor, or you mix up something and you're going to a reserve to start the second half. Like that's not going to catch anybody off guard. The bottom line is this: the Celtics thoroughly outplayed them in this game, and I actually thought the Derek White component was big from this standpoint. It didn't feel to me like the Knicks were treating Derek White like he's Jayson Tatum. Okay, and Adam, the reason I say that, you knew Jaylen Brown was going to be more aggressive, and he has shown that repeatedly throughout his career. If Tatum doesn't play, Jaylen Brown is able to dial up these big games. You knew he was going to come out and do that, and it wasn't a monster game. 26 points, 8 boards, 12 assists. That's a great game. It wasn't like he went for 45, okay? So aside from Jaylen Brown, you can't treat Derek White like it's a normal Derek White. He's the only guy capable of doing what he did. He has more 20-point games in the postseason than the rest of their roster combined outside Jaylen Brown.
That's crazy.
So if that, my point being, he had to have his name at the top of the whiteboard in the Knicks locker room, and it didn't feel that way to me. He made a couple tough shots early, but it definitely didn't feel like he was priority number one, which I think he should have been going into the game. He was the difference, man. 34 points. He started hot early. He kept it up throughout. He was a big part of the closing push when they got all that big separation. So I think you're going to see a different approach on Derek White on Friday night, Madison Square Garden. You've got to treat him like a star, not just a role player, because with Tatum out, he is the only other guy that is capable of sort of getting his own because of his quick release. He's really good in the open floor. And I don't think the Knicks made him enough of a priority. He got loose on them. And now you got a problem because you get 60 between Brown and White. You expect it from Brown. I don't know that you can account for 34 from Derek White if you're the Knicks. And it was because of their approach to him, I think.
I think so too, but I think there's this other part, and I'm curious what you think about this one. With Tatum out there, there's a pecking order. Tatum and Brown, they're the priority. Everybody else kind of picks your spots around. The Knicks are switching everything out on the perimeter. And so it is Tatum's call every time, or it is Brown's call every time, because when the team switch, you go, okay, now I got the matchup I want. I'm calling my number here. I wondered with Tatum gone if it's nobody's fault, but it allows everybody else to say, okay, we all have to contribute. We're going to play a little bit more rhythm basketball. And guys like Derek White can beat guys off the dribble. That's part of his value. He can get in there. So I just wonder if you thought there was more like flow to the offense. Again, not trying to say it's Tatum's fault. Of course, right. Different personality.
No, I agree. And that's always the line you walk when you even bring up conversations like this. People want to jump down your throat. Oh, you're saying they're better without Tatum? Right. No, that's not what you're saying at all. What you're saying is, and at least on a night, it doesn't mean that it's always sustainable. But for a night, especially the first, that first one, like you're talking about a totally different flow to the offense. Like you're not going to have as much ball stopping when you've got both of those guys on the floor. They're obviously better with Jayson Tatum, and Tatum and Brown can win any one-on-one matchup that's in front of them at any time. It's a little bit less of that when you have Derek White out there, Drew Holiday, Horford, Porzingis. Like these are your next guys. Pritchard, Hauser, like those are your next guys. You're going to have less of that. So by necessity, the ball is going to move differently. Now, especially the first time you kind of see it, if you're the Knicks, okay, there was great success on the part of the Celtics. The Knicks should have an answer now defensively when they go look at that film for how that type of ball movement and less isolation play played into their problems guarding them. You should be able to adjust to that, which is why over the long term, it's a big problem for a team to lose a guy like Tatum, but in a very short, finite game, 2 games, something like that, you can get better flow and better ball movement. So some of your rotations are not what you were necessarily expecting to have if you're the Knicks.
And this is part of what's fun about the Celtics team is they have so many ways to beat you. And Derek White, you're right, man. He is a heck of a player. What does he not do that star players do? He passes, he gets into the paint, he shoots the pull-up 3 off of the dribble, he shoots volume 3s, he defends. So it is kind of fun watching him in this elevated role, and he was incredible. But the other guy was Jaylen Brown, 26 points, 8 rebounds, 12 assists, a career high by a wide margin to get those 12 assists. I mean, was this just shot making? What do you see from him?
Shot making, I think, clearly, but I just think that, look, it's sometimes, some nights you're talking about Jaylen Brown. Right?
Yeah,
some
Jaylen,
nights when I watch Jaylen Brown, when he's playing with Tatum, I do think there are nights when I almost feel that he can be overly deferential. Like
this is what I'm talking about, though.
Like you're talking about clearly Jayson Tatum has a higher profile in the league, and he's probably going to be named. I think this is be his 5th first team All-NBA. Is that? I think I read that somewhere.
Look it up.
He's about to be named to that, so he's clearly got a higher profile. But Jaylen Brown, where he has raised his game over the last 2 to 3 years, Jaylen Brown now on any given night can assume that role. But when they play together, there are stretches of games and even series of games when I kind of go, I feel like this is tilted too much toward Jayson Tatum at times. Because Jaylen Brown, he's got the quick twitch with the dribble. He's got the start-stop. He's got great elevation on his jump shot. Incredible burst of acceleration when he changes hands. I think he's actually quicker when he changes hands to the ball and then his next step toward the rim than Tatum. Tatum's a better deep shooter. He's certainly a better off the dribble deep shooter. It's a huge part of his game, and probably a little bit of a more consistent mid-range shooter, but not by much. They're really so similar in the way that they can attack guys. When Tatum's not there and Jaylen Brown kind of walks onto the floor and goes, this is literally my orchestra to conduct tonight. You see what he did. It wasn't just the scoring and the 12 assists. He's getting to traffic now. He's making the plays. His importance is elevated, and he rose to the occasion. The question is always going to be, are you going to get enough help on a given night? He got it from Derek White particularly. Let's see what happens on Friday night. Is it going to be Derek White? Or if it's not, if they do a much better job on Derek White, is Drew Holiday capable of dialing up an 18-point game? Can Porzingis give you 15? The way he looks, the way he's played, I doubt that. So where does it come from if it's not Derek White? You only need one other guy sometimes to come along. And Jaylen Brown got that. And I thought Jaylen Brown was fantastic in this game. And he was so stoic the entire game. He looked so sure of himself throughout from the very beginning.
And then what I love about this is a great opportunity for him, this run, because he wins finals MVP. Everybody knows he's a great player, but you carry this team, especially on a comeback and do all this. We're going to talk about him differently. And one of the things I love, Legs, so 26 points is good. 8 rebounds, 12 assists is the incredible part. He decided to be a playmaker in here, and he only took 17 shots. It's not like a lot of guys in the spot. Tatum goes down. I got to get 40 tonight. I got to carry our team to victory. He said, I'm going to make the right play. I'm going to set the table, and I'm going to shut Jalen Brunson down. He said, I'm taking on that defensive assignment tonight. And to me, if there's any reason to be scared if you're the Knicks, and I actually think there is reason to be scared, not a great game from Brunson. Gets into foul trouble. Gets to the line 9 tie. I thought it was less than that even, but 22 points, 6 assists. You're going to win the games. He has 22 and 6.
Yeah, listen, I think you're right. I do think there's still a lot of peril here for the Knicks. I mean, I think anybody that follows the Knicks, that's a fan of the Knicks, that thinks they got to a real comfortable place, like it's a foregone conclusion they win this series when Tatum went down. You're mistaken, because number one, Boston still has a lot of good players. They've got a great player in Jaylen Brown. Derek White is an all-star caliber player. It's the team culture. It's the number of spots they've been in collectively, like they're facing now. This series is a long way from over. And what's going to happen if you can just get within arm's reach in the fourth quarter on Friday night? So you're within a 1-possession game. The anxiety in that building, because think about what we're talking about. The Knicks have an opportunity to go to the conference finals for the first time since
25 years. 25
years. And when's the last time the Knicks won a title? The 70s.
Yeah.
Okay? They're thinking title right now, particularly if they can eliminate like Boston. Right? They're thinking title this year. But first, conference finals alone, 25 years. So the anxiety in Madison Square Garden with the shot making around like the role players that are going to get shots in the fourth quarter, because I think that, Boston's going to do everything they can to make sure it's not Brunson. The anxiety from the fans is going to be transferred right onto the court. And so, look, don't get me wrong. New York could come out and just blast them, make a bunch of shots. The Garden's crazy, and it's just too much for the Celtics. That's very possible. But if Boston could just be within arm's reach, we're in this game, the Knicks are going to start to feel a tremendous amount of pressure knowing Game 7 is on the road. That's the challenge for the Boston Celtics.
And that building, the energy is so great, but that's a double-edged sword. The nervous energy is also great. Like, you feel it extra, when you're in Madison Square. The last thing I have for you, man, I thought this was weird, but maybe I'm overthinking it. The starters for the Knicks have not been great. Actually, it's when you bring in Mitchell Robinson, you bring in some of the other guys where they really go to another level. They didn't make a sub in the third quarter, the quarter that really determined the game, until the 3-minute, 17-second mark. It was tie game to start. It was a 13-point game at that first sub, and it just felt long. I just wonder what you think of the stat there about the starting lineup. I mean, we know Mitchell Robinson's been great in the series, but waiting that long.
I think that probably reflects Tom Thibodeau's trust factor. And listen, man, the stakes get raised, right? You get a little bit tighter, everybody, and you trust less. I think you see coaches kind of do that almost. I saw it actually Game 3 of the Golden State series, Minnesota, and how many minutes he played Jimmy Butler, how many minutes he played his top guy, Steve Kerr, and they lose a very close, tough game late. And it felt like then Game 4, when they got blasted in the second half of that game on their home court, it felt like everything was left out there in Game 3 because Steve Kerr understood,
right,
This is the one. Like, we got to do everything we can to get this, and I feel like Tom Thibodeau is probably going to trust less as this series continues to get tighter, and it's tighter than ever now as you face a Game 6.
But Mitchell Robinson, I think, is part of their best punch here. I know they're afraid of the fouls.
Well, he answered that last night, so maybe that ends.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying, he's going to go and make 6 in a row in Game 6 if they start doing that, but he did it. So maybe now that's kind of less of a factor, so you don't worry about that as much if you're Thibodeau. You're right, though, about the starters across the board. I mean, look at OG Anunoby when they were playing that stretch without Jalen Brunson. OG Anunoby upped his scoring numbers to like 24 to 25 a game for over a month. Okay? By far the biggest numbers he's ever put up in this league. He's outside of games 1 and 4. OG Anunoby in this series, in those other 3 games, is 4 for 27 from the field. So you're talking about the floor being so low on those nights. It's had a hard time overcoming that, especially when you're not playing a lot of offense off your bench. Your offense is coming from those 5 guys. That's where it's coming from. So if Anunoby plays like that, if Jalen Brunson does a great job, if Jaylen Brown does a great job on Jalen Brunson like he did last night, Karl Anthony Towns, was like, okay, they need more. Karl Anthony Towns in the last series against Detroit made 12 threes in the series. He's made 2 in this one.
That's crazy.
It's a big part of his game.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you just look at what is like being taken away from some of those other starters, and that's why, to your point, and I backed you up, I don't think this series is over. Like, it's not crazy to think that the Boston Celtics could win in Madison Square Garden on Friday and win a Game 7 at home. So you're going to have to get maybe your best performance out of some of those role players in Game 6 at home.
It would be incredible for this one to go 7. I think the Celtics would have all the momentum in the world if that happens. This is the thing about a 7-game series, is especially when you get a 3-1 lead, you drop Game 5, whatever. But then Game 6 feels like it's so, if you drop 2 in a row and you go into a Game 7, the other team has all the momentum. So that's what makes this one great. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see the atmosphere for this one. And if the Celtics manage to pull this one out, oh boy, would it set the table for a weekend. Let's take a break. On the other side, we're going to get to the other series. The Timberwolves might be my pick. I think the other day I think Boston was my pick, so maybe I have the pick of death here. But I think Minnesota is playing as well as anybody over these last handful of games. And I want to talk about them downing the Warriors on the other side. All right, back here, segment 2. Let's move on to our next games here. The Warriors go down to the Wolves 121-110. This game, the Wolves fought back. The Wolves were up for most of the game. The Warriors fought back, made a little bit of a run, but the Wolves responded in the clutch. Here's where I'll start for you. 2 stats. 1, they had a 121 offensive rating in this game against a very good Golden State defense. And Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards had 20 points each in the last 3 games. And it's in these last 3 games, Legs, that I feel like they kind of became the team I believe they could be. They look really good, and those 2 in particular look really good on the offensive end.
I'm going to start with Julius Randle even before Anthony Edwards. This is the best, for me personally, the best consistent stretch I think I've ever seen Julius Randle play. Yeah. I was never like this big Julius Randle fan throughout his career. And I always thought, he kind of holds the ball a long time. He's not a super consistent mid-range shooter. And when he was the Knicks and their best player trying to get through the playoffs, he had some struggles in the playoffs because teams were forcing him to that shot. Like, can you make this contested 18-footer? If you can, great, because that's what you're going to get all night, because we're going to load up on you in the post, load up on you in your drives. He wasn't really even a three-point shooter at all at that time. So the shot that was afforded to him was the 18-foot mid-range pull-up, and he could not make that shot consistently when he was the Knicks. So I was like, okay, well, what really is Julius Randle? He's tough, he plays hard, but he's limited. That's kind of how I always felt about him. And even in this beginning stretch here with the Timberwolves, and I was giving him some benefit of the doubt. Because that's a big adjustment, totally different spacing, different team. You got to get to know these guys, new coach, all that stuff. Playing with a different star that plays differently, Anthony Edwards and Jalen Brunson. So I gave him some time. And I'm glad I did, man, because I really wasn't, at any point critical of Julius Randle this year. And this guy, what he has done over the course of really the playoffs, but even down the stretch of the season, has been the best basketball, I think, of his career, because he is now basically everything that he puts up around the rim or going downhill toward the rim, you expect to go in. He's making enough threes that you got to honor him out there. Now you close out and then he goes by you to that left hand. I think Julius Randle is the reason that you now look at Minnesota and say, I can envision Minnesota playing in the finals. And I don't know that I thought that prior to this stretch of Julius Randle in the postseason.
It's true, but part of this is, I think, by design. And I love it because players do have to adapt their game. They have to adjust. But I also believe, maybe it's because I have so much faith in Tim Conley, that this was part of the vision. They knew how this team was developing. They'd seen it. It's not like this team was put together the last second. They had a run last year. You see strengths and weaknesses. And the whole season to me for the Wolves has been about them discovering now how to not just make Randle fit in. How do we use his strengths to our advantage? And he's given enough, in terms of he clearly knows that this is Anthony Edwards' team. He plays to it, but he's the release valve. He's the secondary creator there. And I just feel like I'm not trying to take credit away from him. He's fitting into the system while being who he is. That's success.
Totally agree with you. And I'll tell you this too. We interviewed him before the game 3 that Dave Pash and I called. First time I'd ever met Julius Randle. He came in and gave us 15 minutes before the game. And I was blown away with how soft-spoken, but how much he had to say when you asked him questions, how specific he was. It told you that his IQ is really high for the game in his answers, his leadership, his comfortability in his own skin now. I think he's more comfortable in his own skin as a player than he's ever been. I don't know that there's quite as much pressure and scrutiny playing in Minnesota as it was in New York. I think that's been good for him. And he has developed into the perfect co-star to Anthony Edwards. And their relationship, and he alluded to this, has grown significantly over the course of the year. You get to a new locker room, you might have crossed paths with a guy. You don't know a guy until you spend a year playing with him.
Totally.
And I think their relationship and the way you connect as people, that's a big part of this. And reading each other on the court. And look, you look at Minnesota, you got 2 guys now at that level offensively, and then a great, basically stable of role players that totally buy into what they're supposed to do on a given night. And it's not always the same guys on a given night. If they ever get DiVincenzo shooting the ball well the way he was earlier in the year, the way he was in New York, that's a whole nother level for this team. He's really struggling to find his shot, but Gobert and Conley as an organizer, Gobert's defense and rebounding, DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, their energy and toughness defensively, Naz Reid, what he brings as a two-way player as a backup center. They've got a great roster. And they're only playing 8 guys.
Yep.
But those 8 guys, because of the versatility of some of those guys, it's almost like you have 10. Because in some ways, Naz Reid's your backup center, but then he could be a starting power forward.
Right.
Or he could play alongside Julius Randle. So you have almost 2 players in one. It's the same thing with some of those other role players. Jaden McDaniels, I didn't even mention. I should have mentioned him too. The postseason he's had. This is a really, really good team, and it starts with the direct connection between Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle on the floor, which now tangibly has been great almost every night.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And the whole point about 8 guys, it's perfect if those guys are the right guys. Like, you don't need 9, 10 guys. You need 8, and they have a backup big, to your point, that can play with both. So you can play them alongside either of your other bigs. They have backup defenders who are also shooters. And that's the hardest thing. That gives you versatility so you can plug guys in. And that's just what it feels like when you watch them play. But to me, it's the 121. I know Golden State. Look, this Golden State team without Steph Curry, I don't know if there's another team, maybe Denver without Jokic, that more has their identity wrapped up in one player. So they get the win of the Warriors. Warriors battled, but I don't know how impressive it was. What I do know is impressive was 121 points against that defense, because that defense is still good. And they were efficient. They were efficient in pick and roll, ISO, post-ups, transition. Your question about Minnesota going into the playoffs was, can they score at a championship rate? We know they can defend, but can they score? They're scoring like one of the more efficient teams. And that's, to me, why I'm buying them right now as good of a chance to win the championship as anybody.
I agree. I mean, they're right there. I think the 2 teams that have consistently played closest to their ceiling throughout the postseason are Minnesota and Indiana. Those are the 2 teams to me that when you watch them all season and you go on a night when you watch them and go, man, they played great tonight. Like, I know what their top level is. I think those 2 teams have been closest to their level the most consistently throughout the postseason. And Indiana's 8-2 so far in the playoffs. They move on to the conference finals, and I think they've got a great chance to be in the NBA finals. A great chance, because I think their offense is that good. And now Minnesota has thrust themselves into the conversation. Then they're sitting here waiting on the winner of OKC Denver. But I think whoever it is, I'm not making any predictions on that yet. Minnesota clearly, I think, is at the point you're not going to be shocked if they're in the NBA finals. And I don't know that anybody thought that necessarily. Maybe you did going in. They could kind of convinced me over the way they played against the Lakers. Now, this series was tough because, like you said, how different Golden State looks without Curry, what his motion and presence do for their role players, and that was so obvious once he went down. We did games 3 and 4 out in the Bay Area. Game 3, you get 63 out of Butler and Kuminga, and nobody else does anything. If anybody else gives them anything that night, they're not winning this series, but they would have won that game.
And it would have extended it.
And it would have extended it. And then, hey, maybe you see Steph in game 6. And that's what that Saturday game 3 felt like. They've got to close this game because you may see Steph Curry at the end, and maybe it would be a difference. I still think Minnesota would have won the series, but they gave them nothing.
Yeah.
And then after that, Jimmy Butler basically disappeared offensively in games 4 and 5. Now, they're saying he was dealing with something. He wasn't feeling right. Draymond Green alluded to it. I mean, okay, he's out there. He's playing close to 40 minutes. You got to be better than you were in those 2 games if that's your profile as a player in this league. Wasn't able to do it. The one guy that came through in a huge way when number was called was Jonathan Kuminga. And what a way to end his year after getting benched, taken out of the rotation. You are forced to play him. How good was Jonathan Kuminga in games 3, 4, and 5 in this series?
He looked good. He looked really good.
I know you hate him. Adam hates Kuminga. See, that's a big thing. He's got a T-shirt that says, I hate Kuminga.
It's kind of true.
That he wears around.
I'm a Kuminga skeptic is all I put. But here's the thing I'll say. I think he's a good one-on-one player. And when Steph goes away, what do they have? That is their engine. So now it's just need guys that can get buckets. He's clearly one of the better guys that just go get a bucket for us on this roster. And so in a weird way, it almost worked in his advantage.
Well, the one thing that he brought, and Kerr and I talked about this before game 3, the one thing he brought was, man, we're playing against this team in Minnesota. They're long, they're athletic, they're really good defensively. We don't have Steph Curry. Who else is going to go create something just because of your talent?
Just create it, yep.
Just go get it. I mean, I love Brandon Podziemski as a player. He's a winning player. He does a lot of stuff to help you in a given night. He's not going to be able to do that against that level of defender. Certainly Buddy Hield is not going to be able to do that against that level of defender. Moses Moody had basically been taken out of the rotation. It wasn't going to be him. Gary Payton is not that kind of player. And these guys are playing heavy minutes. So who's left? It's Jonathan Kuminga. And my God, did he rise to the occasion? And he was making plays where it was just like offense broke down. Give this 6'8" dude with crazy bounce the ball and see what can happen. And look what he did over the last 3 games. Now, here's what I think it has set up. Because it's obvious the Golden State Warriors think he doesn't pay enough attention to detail. He's maybe not as locked in as he needs to be. I think one way it was described to us was he doesn't make those other plays, the 50-50 winning type plays, the long rebound, the loose ball, draw a charge, the proper rotation on a defensive assignment. I just described Brandon Pajemski. Okay, that's why they love him.
Yeah.
Kuminga does have this other element, but it seems to me they decided that other stuff was more important to them than what Jonathan Kuminga could do as an athlete and as a scorer. So what I've drawn a conclusion is this was a tremendous audition for the rest of the league because it seems to me it'd be mutually beneficial at this point to move on from Jonathan Kuminga and maybe send him to a team that would really relish having a guy like that to add to the rotation at his age. Okay. And the Golden State, you get something back that maybe fits more in line with what you prioritize because it's clear to me that what he does is not a priority for the Golden State Warriors, which is kind of crazy because they don't have a ton of offense on their roster outside of Curry and Butler. And if one of those guys goes down, what are you left with? Kuminga's your next best offensive player, and they took him out of the rotation. It's crazy to me, but I think it might be time to visit that over the summer, and I think the Warriors probably will.
I just don't think he's a fit. But here's my question. He gets bumped from the rotation. You know, he's been in the league a while now. He gets bumped from the rotation. I think his trade value was low. Like, they depressed his trade value. Do you think, even though it was only 3 games, it's 3 playoff games against an elite defense and he gets buckets, are teams more enticed to take a swing off him based on these 3 games alone?
Here's what I'm saying to myself if I'm another team. And I probably got the same exact profile in the Warriors. Look, these guys are going to call Mike Dunleavy Jr., right? They're going to call Bob Myers, who now works for us, that put that together, that know this guy. They're going to pick their brains or what they observe, and they're going to probably feel the same way about Kuminga. What I'm saying is, here's what I would think as a team. Man, this dude, first of all, what is he, 20?
He's super young, 22.
He's 22 years old. He turns 23 at the start of next season. I'm saying this. Man, this kid, okay, I see the warts. They took him out of the rotation. He sat there. He didn't play in a play-in game, barely played in a game 7. And yet when they called upon him when needed, he was there and ready and delivered. He averaged 26 points a game over the last 3 games of this series and shooting over 50% from the field against a top shelf defense. I'm saying, man, you know what? That showed to me a lot of maturity on his part. And maybe there's more there to like what he wants to be as a player than what's been depicted. I absolutely think I would be looking at that and saying, man, that told me he's mentally tougher than he's been given credit for, that he was that ready to deliver on that stage when he probably mentally was kind of like frustrated, mad, pouty, maybe checked out a little bit. All right, man, oh no, we need you tonight. What are you going to give us? Well, how about I give you 30 the first game you need me, and then he goes for 23 and 26 the next 2 games. By the way, at the same exact time, the other guy that was the star, Jimmy Butler, is nowhere to be found offensively. I don't know. I'm looking at him a little bit differently based on the way he finished this out. Are the Warriors looking at him any differently, though? Doubtful.
No.
Because they've had a, 3-year sample size of this. Yeah. So they kind of know what he is. And if they weren't sure about him the whole time, they're never going to be. It's my opinion.
I'm excited for year 3 of Mares and Legler debating Jonathan Kuminga
you,
on a new team next year.
I'm telling you, I got my I Love Kuminga t-shirt. I still have it from Summer League.
I feel like I'm a little up in the debate right now. I'm a little up, but this is a strong, you're closing the gap.
I said 3 years. It's 4 years. So they got 4-year sample size. Listen, you're right. You do.
I got a little lead here.
You do.
Lead,
but how did I just close the gap? I'm running you down. And don't look over your shoulder, brother. You're getting run down right now. You're lucky the season ended. If Jonathan Kuminga had like 8 more playoff games, I would be smoking at him on this conversation.
Let's go to the Wolves real quick here. First of all, Tim Conley takes another team to the conference finals 2 years in a row. This time it's Minnesota, not a team that's been there very often. Little successes have come in one-offs. This is 2 years in a row now that organization reaches the conference finals, and they made a major shakeup It's so rare, for a team to make the conference finals, make as big of a move as they made, Randall Cat swap, and then make it back. And then number 2, I wanted to ask you about this one. Anthony Edwards was on Team USA this last summer, and he was a second row guy, right? The stars are there. He doesn't get to play a whole lot. But every time there's an Olympics and the big guys get together and there's young guys on the team, it seems like those young guys take a step. Now, I'm not saying he made a leap because he was phenomenal last year, but there is a bit of a seriousness to him this time around that I think feels different. And it's really the whole Wolves team. Last year, excited to be there, Game 7, emotional. This year, it's almost like, hey, this was the expectation. And I just look at Edwards and the same thing I talked about the Thunder yesterday about you don't know what you don't know until you get there. I think the Wolves know what they don't know now. And that's part of they have a seriousness to them. They took care of business onto the conference finals. I
agree with that. I think, and that's, everybody you talk to, and I mean, I don't know how many Minnesota Timberwolves games I did this year. I just did 2 more. And every time the conversation about Anthony Edwards' growth as a leader would come up to Chris Finch. And every time he was continuing to add to the conversation. It wasn't like he kept repeating himself.
Yeah.
Every time it was a new example of where Anthony Edwards is in a better place. I thought one of the most telling things that has happened in this postseason was after Game 1 of this series against Golden State. You never see this. Chris Finch sat down at the postgame presser, was asked a question about his team, and that question did not have Anthony Edwards' name in it. And he brought up Anthony Edwards. Starts with him. He has to be better. He's the guy we're looking at. He didn't think his energy and vibe were good enough that night. That's a risky thing to do for a head coach, unless you know you've got a player that's got the temperament to handle that. And in fact, it was funny because then when Anthony Edwards sat down at the same chair and they asked him and they told him what Chris Finch had just said, it was funny because I was like, oh man, this might be news to Anthony Edwards. He got called out by his coach. Star players don't get called out in this league by name. And he said, well, first, I disagree with that. I thought I played great defense, but I had a bad night offensively. And I was thinking, man, okay, so he didn't agree with that. I wonder what tomorrow's going to be like on the off day. Is he looking at him differently? Nope. Walked in the gym. We asked Julius Randle about the same thing because he said that film session, Chris Finch was laying into their team, laying into Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards by name in the film session and basically calling them out. And their response was, he's right. And Julius Randle's words, I love that he did that because I've never had a coach really direct us like that. And this is what it led to. That told me so much about the health of their locker room, the maturity of Anthony Edwards now and the maturity of Julius Randle's got more years in the league, obviously. But Anthony Edwards especially, the fact that he handled that so well. I don't know that he would have handled that as well a year ago. That's where the growth has come to. I think that's basically kind of to the point you just asked me about Anthony Edwards looking like now a more serious, the real deal approach to all this. The numbers are basically the same as last year's postseason run. Yep. They're virtually the same.
Sometimes it's not that, though.
Right.
And that's what it is. It's not like he's already talented, enough to be a champion. He might be a leader, though, in a way. And that whole team has just matured. And this is my question about the Thunder. And I've been very impressed with them in this series as we kind of segue now to tonight's game, which is a really interesting Game 6 in Denver between the Thunder and Nuggets, is the Thunder are young. They are inexperienced. Your question is, can they grow up quick enough to become a title? Most teams this age do not achieve what they have and don't go on to win a championship, but they're showing a maturity. But Game 6 is a different beast. You're on the call tonight. It's your final call of the season. Before we get into that, what are you looking for tonight, and what are your expectations in this game?
Look, you had to, if you were a Nuggets fan, you had to be sitting there watching that game, just getting the win taken out of you.
I wouldn't know.
Up 12, right? Up 12 when Gordon hits the 3. I think that was like mid-third quarter. Their offense from that point on, to me, I thought they kind of shot themselves in the foot. Now, you got to give Oklahoma City a lot of credit. They're the number one defense in the league for a reason. But I don't think Denver made them work for it. Oklahoma City made sure the ball was funneled to the three-point line and left in the hands of guys that they didn't mind shooting it. That was some of it. Westbrook had a couple of really bad misses. Peyton Watson had a couple of bad misses. Jamal Murray went ice cold at the wrong time after he had a great start to the third quarter. But it was also Denver's just complacency, I thought, offensively in the moment to take those shots. And it got away from them. And you're sitting there watching that. I don't know if you were thinking this, and a lot of people probably were like, man, this was their chance to win the series. Like, when are you going to get up 12 on OKC's home court?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to get another chance to do that in a game 7? Now, I'm not saying that they're going to lose the series, because I think it's going to be a great game tonight. I can't predict who's going to win the game. I just think that it's going to require a much smarter approach to what they're doing offensively, a much tougher approach if they're in, again, a one-possession game in the fourth quarter of this game at home than what Denver showed offensively, because I just did not think their offense made OKC suffer or work. And as a result, they bogged down completely. OKC hit you with that closing flourish. By the way, it wasn't just SGA. It was everybody. They had a lot of guys.
Lou Dort, mainly.
Lou Dort, Chet Holmgren had a couple of big baskets. Jalen Williams hit a big 3. Shea hit a big 3. It was the totality of Caruso was great in this game. It was the totality of those guys. If you're Denver, you're in that position again, you have a lead in the fourth quarter of a game, you're going to have to be much smarter how you operate offensively, because I think offense is their best defense against this team.
Because both teams can score in transition when you get the cross matches, everything else. When both teams get set, this is why there have been big runs in the series. It's because it kind of like piles on top. It compounds. Every time you get a stop, you score more likely the other way. Then you get another stop. So here's 2 things I think the series comes down to that I'm curious to kind of hear what you think about these. One, Denver's zone has been incredibly effective.
Yep.
They're not a zone team. They don't run it a lot. In the regular season, they ran it against the Thunder more than any other team ran it. And now we're in the playoffs and they're running it even more. And it's been effective. But OKC did seem to figure some things out in that fourth quarter. And it was almost like they kept it in their pocket to the fourth, like they knew, keep it close. We know how we want to attack this zone in the fourth quarter. So that's one of the things I want to see. Just real quick on just that part.
They've had 2 big problems when they've broken down against in their zone defensively, and it's been effective. There's a couple other areas they have to tighten up. One is when you're in a zone, the most important part of a zone, it requires more communication than man-to-man defense. You've got to be so on point. You can never end up with 2 on the ball in the perimeter if you're in a zone. They've had that happen to them, and when that happens, when the ball has been swung, someone maybe get an open look. But what's also happened, that guy that catches the ball then has about a 12-foot gap to drive the lane, force the backline defender, Jokic usually, to make a decision, and they hit you with lobs. You saw 4 of them in game 4. You saw it again in game 5 at an important time in the game. So they've got to be very careful to tighten up their communications on the perimeter so that you don't end up with 2 guys at 25 to 28 feet, basically in the same general vicinity as the ball handler. You don't need to do that in a zone. I don't care who it is, even if it's Shea. You can get the extra help when he starts to drive. You don't need to have 2 guys that far to the floor committed where you're playing 2-on-1 on the weak side or one guy can drive into the gap of the zone. That's what Denver has to tighten up when they look at the film. Don't get so extended that there's wide driving gaps and don't end up with 2 guys on the ball at any time in a zone. It should never happen. And force the shots that you want taken. When they've been effective, that's what they've been able to do. When they've broken down, they've gotten a little bit loose on the perimeter. Look, nobody plays that much zone in an NBA game.
I know.
Nobody. So they don't practice it. They probably are now, like on their off days. Regular season, how much time do they practice in zone in a normal practice?
They never
Not
play
a
it.
lot.
But I got to think that game 6, you're familiar with it
No,
now.
no.
The Nuggets.
Defensively.
Both
Definitely.
ways, honestly. But Denver executing, at least, they've been doing it so much.
They're going to play it more than any team has played it against OKC. There's no question in my mind tonight. And if there's a game 7, they'll do it again. And they have learned. They're taking a breakdown. They're watching all these plays strung together in a quick film session, one possession after another, the breakdowns.
Yeah.
And they're stopping it and they're talking through it. This was a communication issue. Almost all zone breakdowns are communication issues. That's what they've got to tighten up and be better than they've been at all in this series, in this game.
So that's my question on the OKC side, strategically. On the Nuggets side, I look at it and I go, Jokic struggled in 2, 3, and 4. Jokic did. Game 5, he got loose and looked really comfortable. Some of it was just shot making. And so now I just wonder, has he figured something out? Has the team figured out how to space around him a little bit better? And that's why he's good. And if that's the case, do we expect a repeat performance? I know that was an all-time game from him and what he gave out, 44 points. But we also know Jokic can be consistent at that when he feels like he knows what, he's reading the court well. So that's my other question. How much of it hot shooting versus how much of it do you think 5 games in, he's starting to figure things out?
Well, I mean, clearly based on, the way he had shot the ball earlier and some of the misses he had that were very uncharacteristic. yeah, ball goes in the basket. That's part of it. And, whatever reason, he got into a nice rhythm in this game. I absolutely think he can replicate it. Now, does that mean, you're getting 40 plus?
It doesn't need to be that.
Might not have to.
Yeah,
the key is you hope it doesn't have to if you're a Denver fan, because he just did that in a loss. So you don't want that to be the case. It's better if it's more in that 30, 35 range and somebody else, Jamal Murray, is hot throughout, doesn't hit that cold stretch that he hit, or you get it from one of the role players. So maybe it's not as good as that, but I do think the way he played and the way he operated in Game 5 gives him a great sense that he's going to have big numbers in this one as well. And I don't think they can win unless Jokic has what we would define as a great game.
I want to ask you about your job now tonight, because this is the last game you're going to be calling. This was your first year. You did some of this color commentary last year. You kind of sprinkled it in, but this is the first year that, that's what you did, was color commentary, flying all over the country, covering these games. First of all, how do you like it?
Love it. It's just been one of the most rewarding years of my career. I've been at ESPN 24 years. Definitely one of my favorite years. And it's for a variety of reasons. One is just the energy of the game.
Yeah.
It's live. So when I get to go in studio and it's either before a game or at halftime or it's after the game, right? So now I've seen the game and now I can formulate my thoughts and kind of know, okay, I'm going to go do a touchscreen with these two plays and hopefully really make you understand why this was so important in the game. And I love doing that. And I'm going to do a lot more of that in the conference finals and finals coming up. But I love the challenge of teaching while it's happening. Like that live live reaction moment where you're seeing something, hopefully, that you feel like other people aren't. And now I'm going to have an opportunity right now while you're watching the game to give you something to look at that just happened. Why did that happen? Here's why. Or his next trip up the floor, something to look at. Doing it live, the adrenaline of that, the energy in the arena. That's the number one reason it's such an awesome thing that I was able to do. I'm 30, I think more than 30 games this year I called. It was great. But the other reason is there's a different level of camaraderie that you develop with the people you're calling games with because of the travel associated with it. You go into the city the day before. The night before, you always go to a production dinner. You get to know these people, like Dave Pash, and some of the George Sedano, Katie George, like the on-air talent. I might call games with Mark Jones, Ryan Rucco, and Mike Breen as well, Doris Burke. But also the production staff, the directors and the producers. Like, you know who they are. You don't even know them. And now, like we had an off day, for instance, in Napa between games 3 and 4. We took the whole day, went up to Napa as a group. Oh man,
that's great.
It's like a bonding experience, and it's kind of like a beautiful send off to the season. So that's the other part of it. I've made great friendships this year, that people that I knew from afar that didn't know well, and I've made some like really close friends throughout this. So the combination of the two, it's been great. Hopefully, the plan is for me to be calling a lot of games for a long time.
Oh, we hope so. Last thing I think is, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you've been in the league, you know a lot of people, but this year when you're going to places, you get to talk to everyone. And I imagine that helps too. You're always watching the games, but you always have an anecdote now about, I was talking to Finch, or I was talking to so-and-so.
That's a great point. It's so much different when you're actually in their face talking to them as just trying to judge them from afar. Met a lot of people this year for the very first time. First time I ever met Mark Dagnall, right? Now I did like 5 Thunder games, and I'm like, man, this is one of the smartest guys I've ever met in basketball. Yeah. And like this, he's funny too, because you sit down with a guy like that, he's asking you about your job.
Yeah.
Like Pash and I were both like blown away. He's like, so tell me about your job. Like, how do you prepare for it? Blah, blah, blah. How much film do you watch? Like, so yeah, you get to meet these people on a different level. So yeah, that's a big part of it for sure. And also, there are things I can see when you go to commercial break.
Right. Oh, you're right.
Okay, so interactions between players on the bench. I'll never forget, there was a challenge.
You're right there too.
There was a challenge in a game, and I don't remember the principles involved. There was a challenge in a game. Basically, second row coach jumps up, and he's telling the head coach, challenge it. So he goes, all right, timeout. He didn't even look at the replay. The head coach was like, timeout, challenge. Go to break. They challenge it. They lose it. And he like reamed this guy out, because it's like stuff like that. Little dynamics, interaction with players. You can tell when two dudes are ticked off at each other. Yeah. You can see when a star player puts his arm around a role player during a break, when a guy's struggling and showing you leadership stuff. It just gives you a much greater insight to the dynamic and the culture of the team when you're at the arena and you could just sit there and watch these guys while the cameras aren't rolling.
Well, guys, he's calling the Nuggets Thunder game tonight, so show him some love on the timeline, man. This was really cool. His debut full-time season doing color, and it won't be his last. Let's go to our last topic here, which is the Mavs won the lottery. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Don't get fired. We just talked about how much you love your job. Don't get fired here, Legs.
No, I won't. And listen, first of all, I'm one of those guys.
Yeah.
Like, I have a hard time buying into most conspiracy theories, so I don't buy into it.
The same.
I think it's just absolute luck. And a lot of people might freak out about that. I think it's absolute.
It's a lot of luck.
It's really bad luck for some other teams. Like, what did
Washington
get the 7th pick with the year they had?
Yeah.
It's luck. Philly ends up 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. That's what it is. It's not even just the Mavs. So Mavs number 1, San Antonio number 2, and Philadelphia number 3. And a couple things here. Like, again, I'm not really this conspiracy theorist, but it is very convenient. The most down team, the Dallas, they get rid of the Luka, send him to LA, and all of a sudden, all right, here we go.
But let me ask you. All right, go ahead. Finish your question. I got one for you.
Go for it, because I don't mind waiting into here.
Because here's my thing.
Yeah.
So your premise would have to be,
Sure.
if you were one of these people.
If I were.
Yeah. Kind of sounds
Let
like
me put on a mask here and pretend to be one of these guys.
As soon as the show ends, you and James are over there with your tinfoil hats, like sitting there, right? So if you were one of those people, your premise would have to be that the league specifically wants the Dallas Mavericks to be.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. There can be no other premise. There can be no other premise. No, it's not. Because if you buy into it, you're saying that they handpicked the Mavericks.
It was Luka. We want him in LA. We're about to lose LeBron. We got no one in LA. We need him in LA. But if you do that for us, we'll get you Cooper.
So you think?
I don't think. Hold on. No, I don't think this.
Okay.
But
Well,
if I did,
you're one of those guys. You're one of those guys. Just throw out stuff like that and then go, hey, I'm just saying.
All I know, 1.8% chance, and here they are. They've got it. But in all seriousness, you love Cooper Flagg. We've talked about him all year. A special player. So I'm curious your thoughts again on Cooper Flagg. We've talked about him a little bit. But also, Dallas, that's not a traditional place you go when you're a number 1 pick. Usually you go to a team that's got 4-year rebuild and everything like that. They can contend next year in their mind. And now you add that?
No question. I legitimately told people when Cooper Flagg was 15 years old, and the first time I had seen a body of work of him, that he was going to be the number 1 pick of the draft eventually.
Yeah.
I did.
14?
And the thing that stood out right away was, this is not your typical, lanky. At that time, he's probably maybe 6'7". He grew into 6'10". Kid that's got some talent, that's out there doing things, big numbers on the AAU circuit. It was the toughness, the edge, the competitiveness, the mean streak. All of that was telling me he has the entire package. He's got the skill. His passing is absolutely off the charts. He immediately makes everybody on the floor better. I don't care what level it is. His scoring and his athletic ability at the rim and toughness and finishing. His shooting is coming along. I still think he's got a mechanical hitch in his shot. Looks a little bit like Franz Wagner at times. That needs work to be a consistent deep shooter. There's no question he's going to add it. His handle is good enough. It's going to get better and has to. But here's the thing. He is an absolute game-changing defensive player.
Yep.
From day one, you put him on the floor, your team is better defensively, even at the NBA level, because of what a great weak side defender he is. And with 6'10" range to guard, perimeter players can guard one-on-one on the ball too. He's got the whole package, but most importantly, he has the chip on his shoulder and the toughness that comes with these expectations that can crumble guys. They're not going to crumble Cooper Flagg. So, look, you heard, there's who knows what they're going to do. There's all kinds of rumors floating around. They're going to try to use him to get Giannis, and I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not giving up Cooper Flagg for damn near anybody because I think he's going to be that good by year 4 in the league.
Yeah. I'm excited for it. I think he fits them. I mean, they do have some players that maybe there's a little redundancy on their roster right now. You think about it, their front court is really good. They've had PJ Washington, Anthony Davis, Lively, Gafford. That's a lot of guys. Now you add Cooper Flagg. I am curious if they need all that depth or if this signals to them that, Gafford, Lively, Washington, maybe even one of those or two of those guys are more expendable now. If you feel like that Cooper Flagg's ready to fill one of those roles. So I just look at it and I go, Dallas, I still think what they did was insane. I don't think you let like a Nico off the hook because I think it's such a crazy move. But if anything could have saved him, I thought they were drawn dead. If anything could have saved him, it's this. And now you go, you know what? Plan's back on.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Nico had a rough ride there, right? When this trade went down. He got a little bit of validation, I guess, when the Lakers flamed out in the first round.
Yeah, that part.
He probably let him sleep a little bit better from that point on. But again, you're dealing with Kyrie's injury. That's half a season at least. You might not see Kyrie Irving until March. Yeah. I don't know when he's going to play. Here's the thing. I'd be very, very, very surprised. And this isn't always the case. There have been teams that have been decent teams to good teams that have gotten a top pick. Usually in that situation, the guy's not plugged in like he's going to start right away.
Right.
Because he's going to a good team. I'd be shocked if Cooper Flagg is not an immediate starter for this team.
Yeah.
Like day one, he's starting for this team on a team that, if healthy, you think is a real factor in the West. That's what's crazy about this scenario, as opposed to going to a Washington
right.
or a Utah or a team like Toronto or one of those type teams where it's going to take a few years for them to be relevant. Like Dallas has relevance in their sights next year, and Cooper Flagg will be a massive part of that.
And we don't have to talk about it, but the Spurs getting the second pick, Sixers third, to me is just another, your top two picks went west. To me, it's crazy with how weak the bottom of the East was this year. Number one, number two.
East needed it, really. They did. I mean, that was probably the biggest feeling I had, was not so much, I don't care where these guys go, but it was because someone asked me, where would you like to see him go personally? Yeah. And I said, well, at least East.
Right.
to give a guy that I think is going to have that kind of star power and draw power and attraction and box office, which I think he will be. The East needs it.
Yeah.
More than the West, clearly. But now, here you go. Another guy goes West, and then I don't know beyond that. I mean, there's whether it's Harper, Ace Bailey, like you can look at different mock drafts, you'll see different guys slotted in there. Cooper Flagg is the consensus number one on any board. So to go West and add another guy on that level into that mix, it almost seems unfair to the East.
Let's go to some super chats here. I see we have a handful of them here. Flying Indigo says, if you merged these two players in a lab and combined their best attributes together, who would be the better player, Kobe and LeBron or Jordan and Durant?
Jordan and Durant.
Michael Jordan with KD's, their best attributes. So you're going to get about a 7-foot Jordan with KD's jumper.
That's what I'm saying. It's the shooting ability of Durant that tips that. Because when you're talking about Kobe, LeBron, and Jordan, you're talking about three guys with that competitive will and just the all-around play on the court to dominate. And now we're going to go ahead and inject Kevin Durant's shooting ability into that equation with one of those players. Yeah, I'll take that.
I think if he would have gone Steph and LeBron, it might have been more interesting. Because if you get LeBron's athleticism, body, IQ, and everything, a Steph Curry shot, maybe it's more fun. What do we got here? Mike, but no Ike. Legs is in our city. Let's go. Denver has won regardless today, folks. What must happen? More Watson minutes. Others to make some threes. Yoke, Murray, both 25. So he's asking of those things.
All right, man.
All of the above.
Listen, Murray and Gordon are the tipping points for this team. I expect Jokic to be great in this game. And that might not mean a big monster scoring number. Maybe it's 25, but then it's 21 rebounds. So he's going to be great in the game, however you slice it up, no doubt. So it's those other guys, and Murray, I don't know if you feel it's more Murray or Gordon on a given night when they're great is a bigger pendulum swing in their direction for the team.
It's Jamal. I mean, Aaron Gordon more consistently good and often, but Murray, when he's good, they're great.
Then one of those two has to be great. The other guy has to just be like average. And then it's going to be timely contributions of the rest of the supporting cast, which they did not get in the fourth quarter or down the stretch of that game. And for me, man, I'm looking at Michael Porter Jr. He had the one good game. He's 5 for 32 in the other 4. 5 for 32. He's not really a factor defensively. 6 rebounds a game. It's okay. Regular season numbers. I'm sorry, man. It's at the point. I just think you're beyond the point of expecting him to play well. Now, Westbrook, I understand streaky, can be like a little bit off the wall. Shot 2 terrible threes in that game. I feel like if you come down to that decision again and one of those guys is on the floor, I think Russell Westbrook has a better chance to make a play to help you win a game.
There you go. What do we got? Teddy Perkins says, give me 5 media personalities, including yourself, that you think would be a good starting 5 to hoop with. I like this one. So me and Legs we're the cornerstones of this team.
It's a hell of a pick and pop 2-man game there. I can tell you that right now.
That's this.
And everything I've heard about Adam Mares anchoring the defense, I think we're going to be fine down the back end. So,
and I don't know, honestly.
Who else?
In the
media?
Tim Fahir is really good. I've never seen him hoop, but I know he played in college. I don't know.
Across the board, I bet you.
We count JJ Redick. Can we get him on this?
Yeah, I bet you JJ's still in great shape, too.
What else we got?
Reggie Miller probably still balls a little bit.
I love it. We just went with old players and then me. This is what we need right here.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of like other like play-by-play guys that I can expect to go out there and give me something in my rotation. Like I don't know.
I don't know if they're out there. I love it. I'm the funniest part is I'm bringing the ball up. I'm not passing. I got 4 ex-NBA guys, and it's just me taking.
Hey, our sideline reporter Katie George, who's going to be on the game tonight, like she was a big-time volleyball player at Oklahoma. Like I'm guessing she might be able to dunk. Like we might be able to, we might be able to set her up. Those college volleyball players, man, can jump through the roof. So we'll set her up, maybe bring her in for a few minutes.
Diz says, if hypothetically Dallas was promised the first overall pick in this year's draft, would that change how you view the Luka trade? Just in theory, of course. Adam Silver would never do anything nefarious. If you knew you were getting the number 1 pick, it's still crazy. It's Luka Doncic, man. You build around it. You figure it out. There's no redeeming this.
You know what I said from the beginning, and I'll say it again. This is how I sum it up. The downside risk was too great to make the trade.
Yeah.
Meaning what this entire thing is only going to be judged by what Luka does. Not even what Anthony Davis does. Not even what the Mavericks do. We're not going to judge it by that. We're going to judge it based on how much winning Luka Doncic does in the next decade.
Yeah.
Period. And we're not going to really be able to judge it at all, probably till 5 years from now, because we want to see what does Luka do in a Laker uniform? What do they put around him? Does he win a title there? Does he win multiple titles there? That's ultimately all that's really going to matter, because if that happens, that's what you traded away at 25, and it's unprecedented.
I agree.
So,
what else? The Snow Bunny Simp says, biggest failure, 25 Cavs or 15 Hawks. The Cavs were injured, but they were also the team I thought had a better chance. The 15 Hawks, to me, they had to go through LeBron. I just never thought they were winning.
The 15 Hawks, is that the 60-win team?
Yeah.
With the 4 All-Stars?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't put them in that category.
I mean,
25 Cavs is like relative, because listen, man, here's the thing. There was 3 teams in this league this year. And for a long time, it was really 2 that were on a completely different level than the rest of the league. OKC, Cleveland, and then Boston. But Boston even had stretches where they weren't playing at the caliber of those 2 teams. So for them to go out this way, injuries were a massive part of it. Yeah, man, to me, there's no comparison. You'd have to put this team, because of the regular season that they had, to end up losing the way that they did to the Pacers that's got to take the cake.
Alex says, am I the only one who believes Pacers are going to give the Knicks major problems? Absolutely not. If that's the matchup, I have a hot take for it, and we'll get to it when we get there. We don't have time to go into it now, but Pacers, to me, absolutely could beat the Knicks. That's an interesting matchup to me.
I said to you when we sat down, and I've been saying it for the last 24 hours, don't be surprised if the Indiana Pacers are in the NBA Finals. Yep. Telling you right now.
Alex Lopez says, just goes to show you just need the right coach and cast. It's true, man. Basketball. And you need a little luck, to be honest with you. Health and everything else at the right moments. Leonard says, Legs, what did Draymond drop off at your desk before the tip-off?
So he came over, he started walking toward us, and he had something in his hand. And I didn't know. I guess I've been critical of Draymond at times in his career. I don't know what he's about to throw at me. He ended up throwing something on the ground, and I don't know what it was, to his point. It went down at the table, like right below my feet.
So it wasn't a gift.
Couldn't see. It was not a gift. He did not drop it off on the table. It was definitely not. I don't know what it was, man. It could have been just a piece of tape or some gum. I really don't know.
Carrot Hammer says, Legs, bring in another 30-20-20 Jokic game, Nuggets in 7. That was last time you were here.
But you recall what that took for that to happen, right? You recall what happened that night. What happened at the end of that game to give Jokic 5 more minutes.
Oh, they had to go to overtime. What was it though?
Hit that corner
that's
three.
Right. That's right.
Booker made the extra pass.
1.8 seconds
Didn't
left.
know if there was enough time to make that pass. He makes it. Durant hits the 3. And I don't know what Jokic's numbers were at the time, but it gave him the other 5 minutes to give us that historic night. And I love the best phrase of all about that game: a double, triple double.
Yeah.
Right?
He had 2 of them.
He had 2 of them.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. 1 in each half.
Alex Lopez again. 5 best coaches in the league. Can you rattle them off quickly?
That's man.
We have to
hit me with that right as we're going off the air.
Maybe we'll save that for another day because that's a good one.
Let me put some thought into that.
Wayne
I don't want to
Scully,
slate anybody.
Tim and Adam and Legs and Coach Nick finals breakdown ? Hey man, those are our guys, man. Coach Nick, by the way, had a great breakdown today on the zone defense that Denver was throwing and what OKC did. So what I was talking about earlier, a lot of that comes from the breakdown that he had. So you should check out his channel, B-Ball Breakdown. And of course, Tim's my guy, man. He's fantastic. Legs, always fun having you in studio.
Man, this is great.
Last time this year.
I'll start going on looking at some real estate in Denver.
There you go.
Make this third home.
I'll buy you a coat if you move out here. Maybe a little scraper for your car.
Nice today. Last night when I got off the plane, it was cold, man. What's going on?
A little bit. All right. He's calling the game tonight, so turn your volume up extra loud. Thanks for hanging with us. We are back tomorrow, so whatever happens tonight, we will be talking about it on tomorrow's show. We'll see you.
We all silly like the mayor.